Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Lazy Entrepreneur. I'm here with Tom Hashemi of We Are Flint, a communications consultancy aimed at political types and think tanks. I don't really understand it, but that's what we're here to get into. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
So, I've done a very bad job of introducing your company. How would you describe it?
Flint was set up in the wake of Brexit as a response to Brexit, with the goal of getting policy and political types to engage in a more effective way with the general public. So trying to get them to speak to people on a level that they can actually understand and engage with, rather than being too academic or fact-driven and kind of unemotional about the whole thing.
So who are your target market? Who's actually paying your bills?
Think tanks, universities, so communications directors, VPs of communications at think tanks and universities and organisations like that. We do some work with trade associations, governmental organisations like the OECD.
So you're kind of helping them get in touch with normal people.
I suppose there are two sides to the coin. There's the top-down approach, which is trying to improve the communications from policy elites to the general public, but then there's also the bottom up, which is trying to get the general public more interested in policy, which is not always very interesting. I mean, there are some really niche areas that people aren't going to be interested in for very good reason. I mean, I don't know why anyone would be quote unquote normal people would be interested in like NATO air policing in the Baltics or something. I mean, it's just so far removed from day-to-day life. But then there are some things that are really important, and people, you know, in my opinion at least, should be interested in engaging with, because it affects our lives. I mean, political decisions, you know, affect our day to day, and people. I think people should be engaged in that.
So this sounds like a pretty niche business.
It is.
How on earth did you get into it?
Flint's the culmination of several strands in my life. When I was a kid, I used to build websites. I then went and worked. So I went to university, studied Middle Eastern politics, and then went on to do counterterrorism at King's, Department of War Studies at King's. Worked for a think tank for a bit, and then worked in PR for a big PR agency. And Flint kind of is the culmination of all of that. So we're a communications consultancy that does a lot of digital work, and we, at least at the beginning, focused heavily on international relations and foreign affairs type work. That's become more broad over time. Brexit was the direct catalyst of, we wanted to set up an agency, but we didn't want to do it the same as every other agency where we worked for big corporate clients. We'd done that, kind of did that bit. Wanted to do something as kind of corny as it sounds, but something with purpose, something where we could look back and we're creating some kind of value other than money.
So at what point did you make a decision to move from being in the system to creating your own firm?
It was in terms of the actual mechanics of it, it was a gradual change. I left the big agency that I was working at, went to work for a smaller agency 4 days a week, then worked there for 2 years, was building up Flint, but before it was called Flint, a day a week on the side and evenings and weekends. Then changed to a freelance role, and I was there 3 days a week, so up Flint time to 2 days, then drew that down to 2 days a week, and then Flint was 3 days, and then went full-time on the business March 2017.
That's pretty cool.
It was, I mean, but that day was petrifying when it was like, okay, well, now it's my finances entirely depend on Flint to provide, which was kind of scary.
But also you're able to build it up before that point, while still having security of
100%.
An actual job. And also I imagine a job that's quite relevant to Flint.
Yes, so when I was doing the freelancing, I was working for a big data agency, helping them set up a communications research team. So very, very similar kind of work. Yeah.
And you say that then you had to rely totally on the income from Flint. Was Flint by that point at a point where that was a safe bet?
I think so. I mean, it was... My salary when I moved on was pitiful.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, it was able to provide a pitiful salary. But then I was working on it the whole time. So my living expenses were quite low because I wasn't going out so much compared to previous years. I think that the challenge with, at least with Flint, I've never felt that we'd go under, that we won't have revenue to continue. It's more about the growth rates. How fast could we grow and how quickly can we scale the business, rather than the risk of going under. Because it had this natural organic growth over a couple of years before I relied on it, it had always been able, winter is always terrible for us, and that's fine because we plan for it. Other than that, it always has a steady stream of income. So I was confident making the jump.
And obviously scaling is quite expensive. I think when you quit that job, was it just you working on it?
Yes, full-time, yes. So it started with myself, a colleague who was on about 3 days a week. Then that was it at the beginning. There were just two, maybe. Then we've always had this network of freelancers around us that come in for different projects and support us where we need it. So it never really felt like just two people, because there was a wider group.
Yeah.
And most of the people that work with us believe in what we're trying to do. So it feels, I may be completely wrong with this, but it feels like they give Flint a kind of slightly higher priority than they do their other freelance gigs, because it's not so much about the money. It taps into a deeper kind of emotional relationship, other than freelancing for a high day rate, which is what they do the rest of the time.
So let's get into a little bit about the nuts and bolts and how that all works then. So you're a B2B business, which means you rely on kind of large contracts, few and far between large contracts. Is that about right?
Yeah, there are broadly two types of project. The first is the big, one-hit wonder types, where we earn 5-figure contract value. And then we have the kind of 4-figure contract value that come along. I don't know, we get a handful of them a month.
Yeah.
But then the big ones, not so frequent.
And so you've already kind of mentioned it's a bit feast and famine. Sometimes a year much busier than others. But at the same time, you're managing a workforce.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know you're going to be able to fulfill a large contract without already being set up for it?
It's a big challenge. I suppose we hire based on the lowest point in the year. So if in January and February, which is our slowest time of the year, we are able to support 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many people it is, that's the baseline that we hire on. And then in the peak times, which is kind of March through to September, October, we just have lots of freelancers. So you'll find that the office is 2/3 freelancers during that time. But I suppose freelancers makes it sound like they're quite distant to us. These are people that we've typically worked with over 3, 4, 5 years. We've worked with them in big agencies, and now they're doing their freelance stuff, so we can vouch for their ability to do a good job.
Cool. So then at some point you moved to an office, you started hiring more people.
Yep.
How do you make the decision when to scale the business and reinvest into it versus paying yourself a bigger salary?
So the priority has always been the business, and my salary, if you compared it to what I would expect to get at a larger agency, is about 50% of that. For the foreseeable future, the decision will continue to be to invest in the business.
Yeah.
But I do have a little spreadsheet that says this is my salary over the next 3 years that I can plan.
Yeah.
And it goes up by a marginal amount, but such is life.
And I suppose one of the things about being an entrepreneur and starting a business like this is you are building the equity value of the firm, that while you may not be getting cash benefits right now, that is worth something.
Definitely. And we've had at least 3 approaches from businesses who want to buy us. So there's
interesting.
There's a route there if we ever need it. There are people to go and talk to who would take the business, and I would get paid.
So I imagine most of the people who work for Flint will be working on client projects.
Correct.
At the time. But then you also have people who are working on promoting Flint itself. How do you work that? Is it mainly the freelancers who you bring in for the client projects, or is it just when you don't have client projects on at the moment, everyone goes onto the marketing for Flint?
So it splits. For example, my colleague Tim is a kind of communications researcher. So if we've got comms research projects, he'll be doing them. At the moment, turns out he has a hidden skill in sales. He's just brilliant at it. Has this tenaciousness that's well suited to outbound sales. So he's been leading on drawing up the target lists, developing a sales process, a kind of pattern that we can follow for each one, arranging for our booklets to be sent to them, them to be added on LinkedIn, doing the background research on them and sending them personalized messages, etc., etc., etc. So yes, I mean, it varies depending on the need and what we've got on. But client work always comes first, and then we fill in the gaps with promoting Flint. Every year, we do a big piece of thought leadership research this time of year because it's the quiet part of the year. So we spend these 3 months thinking about how we're going to position ourselves for the next 12 months and doing a piece of research around that to support that, which works quite nicely. Kind of dovetail client work with internal marketing.
Which kind of brings me on to one of the main reasons I actually wanted to talk to you, was the actual marketing and sales side of a B2B business. We were talking yesterday actually, and I was saying that one of the reasons I want to chat to you so much was that I haven't never really done a B2B business, and it's all a bit foreign to me. I know how to sell to individual consumers where they're buying one product for £30, but how do you sell to a business who've got a board of directors and they've got processors, and you're asking them to pay you £30,000 for something they might not realise that they need?
Well, I think that last bit is the most important bit, realising they need something. So I actually have two businesses. The first is Flint, which is the political policy-focused agency. And we have a second business, which is called the 23rd, which is an agency outsourcing business. So we sell into much larger agencies. And the difference between them is that the agency outsource business, they all know that they have the need, right? We sell relatively straightforward products, a productized service offering. They're buying this stuff already. We're just competing against other suppliers. Whereas Flint, we're actually trying to create demand within the market and satisfy that demand. So it's a much harder business to run. Going back to the crux of the question of how do you sell, it's all about relationships, just taking the time to build the relationship. And I mean, I was thinking, I suppose we talked about this yesterday as well. One of the things I'm jealous when it comes to B2C versus B2B is that B2C, you can try things and you know very quickly whether or not it's working. Whilst with us, it can take us 6, 12, 18 months to know whether a specific bit of marketing or a specific tactic is actually having the desired effect. And over those 6, 12, 18 months, we're going to have spent a lot of money on it. So you pot commit.
Yeah, because I can run an advertising campaign for a week, and in that time I probably would tweak it 3 or 4 times, and we'll know exactly how well it's doing. Right. Whereas if you want to run an advertising campaign, it could be... Well, yeah, it could never result.
So, say we're selling a website. We know a client is going to, or a prospect is going to go through a web design pitch and build. So that process for them to select an agency could take 3 months. Write the tender brief, write the brief, submit it out to the agencies they're interested in, get those agencies to submit a proposal, follow it up with an in-person pitch. Could comfortably take 2 to 3 months. So they take another month to decide. Then the kickoff date is like 2 months later. The time scales are just much longer. So you have to run the advertising campaign for like 6, 12 months so that you're going to hit loads of people as they're thinking about which agencies to shortlist and make sure you're on that pitch list.
So, naive question. How do you know when they're looking for a new website build?
Conversations. It all comes down to the relationship. Okay. So most of them you don't.
Yeah.
You just
blanket target the people in your demographic.
Yeah. So we have a prospect list that's about 450 in the US and the UK. That's filled with think tank communications directors and VPs of comms. And they are the 450 people that we care about. Right? We don't really care about anyone else. That's starting to change, and we're starting to look at the researchers within the think tanks as well, for slightly different kinds of products. But predominantly those are the people that will spend money with us. So we have LinkedIn demographic targeting based on job titles in specific organizations of a specific size. We have Twitter ads targeted at people who are likely to who use specific hashtags, and by using those hashtags they're likely to be our target market, and all these things. And we produce regular blog content, have an email newsletter, etc. So we're constantly trying to build that relationship with people, push interesting content at them so that they think of us when they are about to embark on a comms program of any description.
So basically, most of your marketing spend is on letting these people know you exist and reminding them that you exist,
100%.
with the hope that at some point they're going to have a project that you're suitable for.
Yeah. So there's the passive element, but then there's also the active. So the passive is just constantly creating this wall of content, if you like, to surround them with, and hopefully demonstrate our kind of intellectual capability, and we can do the strategy side. Then there's also we're going to get in touch with you and actually have a phone call with you, have a coffee with you, whatever, make it personal and start building a real relationship with them, not just an online one.
So how do you transition from the first to the second?
Depends on I suppose that mostly depends on the location. So DC, everyone is very happy to meet up with you.
Oh.
So whenever I've gone to DC, I just email people.
So you just email random VPs and whatever.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tom. This is what we do.
Wow.
Here's something interesting that I think you'll be interested in. I'll be in DC next week for a few days. Have you got time for a coffee? Not everyone says yes, but much higher hit rate. In the UK, people are just no. People want a very clear reason to take time out their day to meet you. Yeah. But DC has a slightly, from my experience at least, different culture.
That's really
much more open to it.
Because I would have just assumed that they just wouldn't read your email or they just wouldn't reply to it.
I suppose because we're such a niche agency that if you're a think tank and you've got this think tank comms agency emailing you, it's not...
Which they might have heard of already.
Yeah,
That's probably it. You've warmed them up a little bit with all your passive stuff.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But it seems to work.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, because we're here, it's a lot easier for us to do stuff. We have several presentations that we pitch in to a comms person and get them to invite us into the office, and we come and give a presentation to the 2025 communications team, which is really useful. So we go and actually start having a real conversation with the people who would buy our product and start. Yeah, it's a nice method.
So I imagine it must be very difficult to work out how much you should be paying, say, per click. Because for me, I can look at my return on investment very immediately.
Yeah.
I can see I'm putting £5 per sale on clicks and I'm making £8, I'm making profit.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got to try things for 6 months and then it may still have been worth it, but you don't know yet.
So LinkedIn, we typically spend £4 to £5 a click to get people to read our content. We know that they're think tank comms VPs, but we have no real way of tracking them beyond that.
Yeah.
Twitter is even less precise. We know that they're using hashtag think tanks matter or stuff like that, which only a think tank would use, but we don't know what their role is. They could be admin in a think tank, which isn't so interesting for us. So, yeah, it's incredibly difficult. But then you do hear, so we were presenting at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Geneva. We targeted the conference attendees based on the conference hashtag to warm them up. And we drew 2/3. So we were in a split panel session. So with 3 parallel sessions running at the same time. And we got 50 to 60% of the participants who came to ours. So there's also hopefully something, and people had heard about us and wanted to come and hear what we had to say. But then there was also just warming people up, and I can't prove that the ads had any effect.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
it seems to be
finger
working.
in the air.
Yeah. Oh, I find this also interesting. It just feels risky to me.
But it's just experiment. So my background pre-Flint, I specialised in thought leadership, which is basically trying to create a position for a company or an individual that they can own. So I don't know if you think of Patagonia, they kind of own, they've got that kind of sustainability type image, and they kind of own it naturally. And you can look at my old agency, Edelman, big PR agency, they used to talk a lot about trust. They did this piece of research into trust, and within the PR industry, they own trust. So we've mimicked that approach and kind of, I don't know whether we own it, but we did the first research looking at public perceptions of think tanks. Now, as a result of that research, we got 50, 60 meetings with different think tanks. We spent in the low thousands on that research. So the cost per meeting, if you like. So whilst I can't directly correlate it to a project, if we're looking for non-financial outcomes, meetings generated, calls had, etc., we can, it's risky, but you can put some kind of sense of achieving goals to it.
Yeah. There's probably a side to it that makes it a lot more interesting. Everything I do kind of has to work, and if it doesn't work, it's not worth it for my business. Whereas your one, you do a load of things where you're doing research into something which may not have a direct result that leads to money for you, but it does build the credibility of your business and all the kind of stuff you're interested in. The people you're targeting are also interested in.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's stuff you want to research anyway. And it
is.
all just builds the brand and the credibility and the value of Flint.
100%.
Yeah, that's really cool.
100%. That's a lot of fun.
That's why you shouldn't get into consumer stuff, because you don't get that.
But then there's I mean, I've run consumer businesses in the past, but they've always been quite, I don't know, I wouldn't want to say test businesses is the wrong word, but they've been small scale projects.
You haven't gone all in on them.
No, I've never been reliant on one for money. I'd quite like the idea of doing it, seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And just rapidly changing it constantly. So my issue is I keep coming up with ideas that a lot of them, my colleague Aidan is fantastic at being like, choosing the right ideas that we should go with. But I kind of just want to play with ideas. That's the fun bit.
Well, that's kind of the whole think tank, thought leadership type stuff anyway, isn't it? Playing with ideas.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. So let's talk a little bit about how business is going. Yeah, so you started the business went full time in March 2017. How long did it kind of take before you knew you'd made the right decision?
Whoa. I don't know. When did you realise you'd made the right choice? It's a difficult question. And it probably comes down to how much you're enjoying what you're doing. But I suppose there are lots of non-financial benefits to doing Flint. Yeah. So obviously, well, not obviously to people listening, but obviously to you, had a baby 15 months ago. Yeah. And not being employed by someone else makes a huge difference to the flexibility that I can take with my work. And how much time I can spend with Finn. So there are some significant benefits to being self-employed. Well, there's pros and cons there, because there's no government mandated maternity and paternity leave. Correct. I paid myself paternity leave, which was pricey. Yeah. But were you like sat there with the baby next to you on your laptop? No. So I mean, it was quite lucky in the sense that he was born beginning of December, just as we were going into a slow time of year. So I didn't actually, there wasn't the same level of pressure on me that there would have been if it had been 6 months earlier. No, I think I took the first month off completely. I mean, I had a few phone calls around specific projects, but didn't touch it really. Then January, I think I started doing like a day a week and slowly ramped it up till mid-Feb. I was back at work. So I took a good 2.5 months, 3 months off, which was difficult financially, but our cash, revenues were massively down. But also, I imagine difficult timing wise, because this was a year and a half into the business, which is quite early, really. Yeah, very early. So we found out that Clara was pregnant about 2 weeks after I'd made the decision to go full time on Flint, and Clara's standing behind Tom, giving him a scowl right now. Yes, it was a risky. But then did that help with motivation in some ways? Not really. It was petrifying. No. You were like, I've got to make this work. But then I suppose that, who was it? I can't remember who it was I was reading. Some businessy book. And he was talking around identifying the biggest risk. And the thing that I've always gone back to is, fine, okay, but if Flint doesn't work, I can just go get a job and I'll be earning more money. So actually the risk is very little. Yeah, and everything you've done for Flint is in the area you'd go and get a job in. It's all completely transferable. It's all building relationships with the people who you might then go for a job. Exactly. So there's actually very little risk when you look at it like that, and there always was. But yeah, I mean, at the time, it was scary to be off work for 3 months, 18 months into a brand new business on which I was completely financially dependent. You basically built yourself a business where your job is to get really matey with loads of important people in the industry you're in. But that's the same with any B2B business. Yeah. But then I suppose you can look at it in a slightly cynical way. But then I'm not doing it to be friends. No. I'm doing it because fervently believe that as at a kind of societal level, we need this to happen. We need policy elites to be better at communicating with the public so that we better understand how our political and policy systems work, because I don't think we do. And I think there are real risks in the future if we don't correct that imbalance. And that's why all of us, not just me, and that's why all my colleagues are involved in this, is not because we want to make money, quick buck. It's because we deeply care about what we're trying to do.
Yeah, literally the podcast that came out just before this one, in it we're talking about culture and how do you, when doing a business where I'm selling table tennis bats, do I have a team who are really motivated and passionate about the business?
Yeah.
But you're full of ideologues who all believe what you do, and you're working towards the same goal.
I think they disagree with you on that. They all believe that we're very politically different, which I think is also a massive plus. But on this specific issue, we're all aligned.
Yeah.
And it helps. It really does help. People don't work. They work for less money than they would do elsewhere. They are, I think at least, highly committed to it. It makes a big difference.
Awesome. Oh, well, Tom, I think your baby's about to wake up. So let's stop this here. Which is a shame, because I want to talk to you about your recruitment process. In fact, actually, just before we go
on.
I remember on Facebook, maybe...
We can keep talking until he wakes up, until we hear the scream.
Let's do that then. So let's talk a little bit about recruitment and finding the right people. So I remember about a year ago, you posted on Facebook probably the best job application you'd ever received.
Yeah. Do
you remember what this was?
I do, yes, the fire extinguisher thing. The smash the glass.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So we were recruiting for a creative, and it was just amazing. She'd sent through this. We'd received this package to the office and had no idea what it was. Slightly nervous when we were opening it because it was strange. It was kind of, what are they, box folders? What are they called?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And you opened it, and inside was one of those plastic things with a glass cover that you smash to get like something out when you're trying to escape from a train or whatever, or so it had this hammer next to it, and you were meant to smash the glass, and inside it was this ornate USB key in a kind of credit card shape with a flip out. It had like a dragon emblazoned on it, and there was no description, there was no paper in it, and I was holding this USB thinking, I can't actually put this into my computer, I have no idea what's on it. But we just had to, right? 'Cause who else? It was amazing. Put the thing in, and there was, her portfolio was on the USB along with would love to come work with you, but it was just the best job application ever. And the application came through after the deadline, and we'd already shortlisted candidates, but it was...
How could he not?
Yeah.
Interview this person.
Exactly. I was, really impressed.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult to recruit?
We've never found it difficult to get lots of applications. We find it difficult to find the right people. And we're really choosy. And we take them through a long process. So it's, CVs and, in this case, if it's creatives, looking through their portfolio, trying to make sure they actually understand what we do and are engaged in it in more than I just want a job level, because I don't really care if you just want a job. That's not the kind of person that we're after. We want people that care about what we're trying to do and believe in it, so that they'll come up with ideas and challenge the way we want to do things, rather than just kind of joining the tribe and just being a yes person. From that, there's a kind of team lunch thing, so make sure that everyone likes each other, and there's individual one-on-one meetings with the key people in the business. And then we get them in to work for a day or 2 days on a client project, see what they're like to work with, and then we offer. So we take a long time to hire, and it's time consuming and expensive as a result, because you kind of need that person. So there's a delay in getting them in the business. But flip side means we have fantastic people who gel well together as a team, who we build something bigger and better because everyone is fully into the business. So it makes a material difference.
I definitely think that's the right way around. Spent ages recruiting Probably one of the business people I follow who I have the most respect for is Marcus Lemonis. You probably don't know him, but
No.
he spends 3/4 of his time recruiting.
That does, yeah.
He's a billionaire, CEO.
What kind of business?
Well, so his main one is like Camping World in America. It's a big
Right.
chain of RVs and stuff like that, but also has loads of other little businesses. He just spends like all his time recruiting, and then that tiny bit of time that's left over, everything else.
Yeah, but then I suppose that's the beauty of a consumer business. If you're in B2B business, well, I don't know. As it'd be interesting to find that out actually. What percentage of a typical, if there is such a thing, typical B2B CEO's time is spent on business, new business versus other?
Have you read Good to Great?
No.
That might be quite an interesting one, and they cover that in
Right.
there. It's basically a big research study that looked at similar businesses and the ones that went from just being good businesses to being great businesses.
Go
What
on.
it is that like set them apart.
What kinds of things?
Well, and one of them was the CEO spends most of his time recruiting. Was one of the big ones.
To replace
And,
his role as a business generator, so that
to replace him, but also to build a layer underneath him of kind of mini CEOs who are all good enough to be autonomous.
Yeah, Richard Branson is from what I've heard acts like that, and that he recruits CEOs into the different businesses and then steps away from it. And my goal has always been to build a self-sustaining machine so that I don't need to be there.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Because you don't want key person liability. Like you had to take 2 months off.
Yeah,
Like ideally, you want the business to not suffer because of that.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
So what do you spend your time then doing? Give me a sort of rough breakdown.
Proposal writing. I'm just thinking about the last week, just because it's fresh in my memory. This week I've written 4 or 5 proposals.
So do you do the proposal writing?
I own most of the client relationships. That's starting to change. My colleague Aidan is more and more owning those relationships, but as it stands, I own most of them. Writing those proposals. What else do I do? So many phone calls. Lots of meetings. I spend a lot of time going out and trying to build relationships.
Well, you kind of already said that the relationships is the most important part of your business.
Yeah.
So it does kind of make sense that is what you're investing most of your time into.
Yeah. This week I've spent a lot of time planning an event that we're doing in a few weeks' time that will bring together a small number of highly select individuals at the Tate for the launch of our next round of research. But planning that is spending a lot of time about thinking about the dynamics in the room.
Yeah.
And how we're going to make it work for them as well as us.
Yeah.
Because that's when we'll generate value from it, as if we generate value for them.
So I suppose that would go into the kind of new ideas side, the strategic side.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also relationship building. 'Cause that's what the goal of that is.
It's all relationship building.
And, feel free not to really answer this question, but do you spend much time actually on the client work?
Yeah, no, I do. It depends on the work itself. If it's web related or if it's communication strategy related, then I do spend time on it. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what it is. Design stuff, I kind of manage the project, but is Vince outside? Tell him we'll be 5 minutes. Which
We can just wrap up now. Yeah.
It was a really awkward end.
Well, the reason is that we're for Tom's girlfriend Clara. We're here for her birthday party. We've rented this kind of castle in the middle of nowhere, basically.
It is.
And there's a baby in another room. It's 10 a.m., but half the people in this castle are asleep and slowly waking up.
I'm surprised that we managed to string sentences together last night.
I am too. And every now and again, someone will walk past in a towel going from bathroom to bathroom, or a baby will make a noise in the background, and everyone's ears will perk up. But anyway, Tom, thanks a lot for making the time to come on.
My pleasure. It was
very
great
interesting, and I'm sure we'll spend some more time chatting about that sort of stuff later today.
Thank you.
Cheers and goodbye.